The Bach, it's hard, and it's going to get complicated today because we're looking at texture. Texture is one of the hardest things to get your head around. It's hard because as soon as you look at it, the music has moved and the texture may have changed. Harmony words, melody words, they tend to be true for the whole of the melody or the whole of the harmony, and structure is really something you learn once for each piece. But anytime you take a magnifying glass and you zoom in on a particular passage, you could look at the texture at any one bar, and the very next bar could be a different texture. So it's really worth trying to get your head around spotting texture changes. That way you don't have to learn what happens where and what happens when. You just see it on the page or hear it and you think, that's an example of that sort of texture. The good news about the Bach, and in fact most of the pieces that we're going to be studying, is that once you've done the hard work at the very start, you generally don't have to work very hard on learning facts about the rest of the piece. The Beethoven's got lots of complicated things running throughout, but most pieces are tough to learn at the beginning, and then we can just flip the pages, getting used to listening to it but not remembering stuff. And that's true of the Bach. Once we've learnt a few more things, I'll say, well, that's it now. And although there are several pages in the score, we don't have to look at those closely at all. So here is a little extract from the Bach. Now this is the violin part, which is VLN, is short for violin, and I haven't bothered putting FLT for flute, it's just flute, because that's short enough already. Now you can see that we have got one passage of music, the music just moves along the board like that, and you should be able to see without even being able to hear it. Remember, you don't need to hear accurately the pitches or the rhythms off the page just yet. You just have to think, okay, I've heard this before, and that's what it looks like on the page. I'm just going to walk over to the piano and play these lines quite slowly. So, this is the violin line. And the flute line. So, we can see that they're very closely linked, aren't they? Hopefully you can see that these are playing the same rhythm at the same time. So, let's see what we can call that. There are lots and lots of different texture words. So the first thing we can say about it is it's got the same rhythm. And that has a posh word, homo, which means the same, and homorhythmic means the same rhythm. You also learned an exactly parallel word, which was chordal homophony, and we looked at that in Year 9. And those two terms are exactly the same thing. Homorhythmic or chordal homophony, exactly the same meaning. So why am I not just sticking to one? Well, because in the exam they may use this one or they may use this one, and if I haven't taught them to you, you'll be a bit confused in the exam. So these guys are playing the same rhythm at the same time. So we're going to listen to that again, and I'll play it on the piano for you. So this is the violin part and the flute part at the same time, slowly. So that is just this bit here, from there to there. So they're playing in chordal homophony or homorhythmic playing, okay? But there's another texture word, and that's why it's so complicated, because we can delve deeper. We've got the same rhythm, yes, but all the notes are always the same distance apart. That is a third from a C sharp to an E. From an A to a C sharp is a third. From a B to a D is a third. Every single note there is a third apart. And in fact, I could even probably just have written it on one stave. could have put them there with shared stems. So they're playing a third part. So in thirds is another texture term. So, is that difficult? I just said texture was really difficult. Well, yes, it is, because look, it changes. And here, they've got the same rhythm, but it's no longer at the same time. They've got different notes, and they're playing at different times, but the rhythm is very similar. Again, if I play that for you, here's the violin part, here's the flute part, but together they sound like this. So they're playing after each other, and we call that imitation. Because this part is doing what that part's doing, but a beat later. So, chordal homophony means they're playing the same rhythm at the same time. They're playing exactly the same interval apart for the whole of those 4 bars. So we can say they're playing in thirds because they're a third apart. Here, they're playing the same rhythm, but a different time, and it's no longer a third apart, so we forget that entirely, and we can call it imitation. But there are still more texture words we can use for this. There are 2 separate lines, so we can call this a 2-part texture. So now you can see why I don't want you to learn what goes on at this passage. What I want you to do is understand how we describe texture and start getting used to identifying it by listening and by looking at the page. Is that all there is to this? Well, no, because there are other things going on. At the same time as these guys are playing, there are other people playing. So if I draw the bar lines down a bit, I'm going to write in the other violin parts. So this is the orchestra violin. And we call that the ripieno, remember? Ripieno is the orchestra violin. And what are they doing? So there is our orchestra violin. So here, this one bar, you can see they have, well, in fact, this bar, and this bar, they have exactly the same rhythm. So we can say that they are playing in chordal homophony in there. We can no longer focus on the fact they're playing in thirds because only these 2 are playing in thirds and this person is playing something different. But the rhythm is the same, exactly the same, so this is still true. Chordal homophony or homorhythmic. But here, you should be able to recognise this little line, ba-bum, as being the same rhythm as the very first 3 notes we get in the piece. Ba-dum-ba-dee-da-dee-dum, ba-bum-ba-ba. So this is based on that first motif, isn't it? So these guys are going diddly-diddly, and this guy's going ba-dum-ba. So this is the second bit of the rhythm from the opening motif. Remember, the whole piece that starts with ba-bum-ba-ba-diddly-diddly-dum. So they've got the diddly-diddly, and this guy's got the ba-bum-ba. So we're combining the 2 motifs. So suddenly it's become complex. And when we have complex music that combines different ideas, but they're equally important, we call that counterpoint. So, let me say again, texture is difficult because if you widen the magnifying glass, you catch more things, and therefore you have to talk about more things. If we're looking at only this the two players here, we can say it's chordal homophony or homorhythmic. It's two-part and they're playing in thirds. But later, they play in imitation. When we zoom out and we look either at more bars or more players, then we have to describe the texture in a different way. So texture is going to be one thing that you are going to hear me go on and on about for the whole course until you just can identify it calmly. We're going to look at big texture words next.